Joining us now to analyze today's headlines is Chenjerai Kumanyika. He's an assistant professor of communication studies at Clemson University. Hi, Chenjerai.
Hi, how are you doing?
Doing well, thanks for joining us. The United Nations Refugee Agency, UNHCR, has released a grim report this morning on the Syria war. It found that more than 4 million Syrians have left their country since the conflict began in 2011. The staggering number is the largest in 25 years, comparable to the exodus of Afghans in the early 1990s. Neighboring Turkey is bearing the largest brunt of the refugee crisis. The 4 million number does not include a whopping 7.6 million internally displaced people inside Syria. UNHCR head Antonio Gutierrez said, quote, "This is the biggest refugee population from a single conflict in a generation. It is a population that needs the support of the world, but is instead living in dire conditions and sinking deeper into poverty." Chenjerai, these are heartbreaking statistics. Do you think the world is paying enough attention to the Syrian tragedy?
Well, I really hope so. I mean, as you pointed out, this exodus is the biggest refugee population from a single conflict in a generation. And the rate at which this is happening is also troubling because it indicates we may not have seen the worst of it. And this is something that people are talking about in Jordan and Turkey. This also has to be understood in the context of mass displacement. The UNHCR has warned that the world is now experiencing what they call an age of unprecedented mass displacement, with one in every 122 humans on the planet being a refugee. Another thing I just want to point out quickly is that, humanitarian aid is going to be crucial in the short term, but in the long term, we're going to have to find ways to address the wealth disparity and create systems that can actually handle large populations and distribute the wealth in a sustainable way. In Turkey, for example, what we see is that wealth disparity has grown, with the top 1% now accounting for 39% of the nation's wealth.
The Union of Concerned Scientists has just released a damning report on how fossil fuel companies for years have known the risks of climate change and worked actively to deceive the public. The report, entitled The Climate Deception Dossiers, is a collection of secret documents and memos over a 27-year period from companies such as ExxonMobil, Chevron, BP, ConocoPhillips, Shell, and more. They were obtained from a variety of Freedom of Information Act requests, lawsuits, and whistleblower leaks. The 85 memos, numbering a total of 330 pages, have been made available online for public view. They reveal that fossil fuel companies actively spread disinformation about climate change and that such deception continues today. Well, if fossil fuel companies, Chenjerai, knew that the planet was in danger of warming but hid it, it kind of takes the wind out of the sails of climate deniers, doesn't it?
Well, Sonali, it should, but climate change denial is shown, to be incredibly persistent when it comes to new information and reasoning and ethics. In 1998, ExxonMobil formed this global climate science team. And looking over the report from the Union of Concerned Scientists, I was struck by how thorough Exxon was about, just how clear they were about the role of CO2 emissions in producing climate change, and also how explicit their plan was. One section of the memo reads, quote, "Victory will be achieved when average citizens understand and recognize uncertainties in climate science, and when public recognition of uncertainty becomes part of the conventional wisdom." So it's just really unfortunate.
Finally, the South Carolina State House in Columbia may be just days away from doing away with its most prominent symbol of racism. The State House voted yesterday on a bill to remove the Confederate flag, 93 to 27, just days after the Senate did the same. Republican lawmaker Jenny Anderson Horn garnered news headlines after making an emotional plea to her colleagues, saying, quote, "I cannot believe that we do not have the heart in this body to do something meaningful, such as take a symbol of hate off these grounds." South Carolina Governor Nikki Haley is expected to sign the bill into law today or tomorrow. Haley wrote on her Facebook page, quote, "It is a new day in South Carolina, a day we can all be proud of, a day that truly brings us all together as we continue to heal as one people and one state." The flag may come down as early as tomorrow, just weeks after activist Bree Newsom was arrested for physically removing it. Now, Chenjerai, you're in South Carolina. Are you worried that lawmakers will feel like they're done dealing with racism now that the flag is likely coming down?
I am worried about that. This is a complex issue for me. This weekend, my wife and I were at the Take Down the Flag protest in Columbia. And, many people who are quick to dismiss this as like a symbolic gesture, but living here, it's hard to watch that flag fighting. And I mean, flying in the air, and I'm sensitive to how Southerners have had to deal with that in a way that you haven't in the rest of the country. At the same time, I'm deeply worried about this, what's going to happen after this. You know, South Carolina has real issues we have to deal with. We don't have a hate crime law. We're number one when it comes to domestic abuse, which affects disproportionately brown women. We're one of the poorest states. You know, our education is at the bottom. So, you kind of have a sense that maybe the conservative politicians are looking at like they're going to take this flag down and maybe not take as firm action on other areas. So I'm concerned.
Well, Chenjerai, always a pleasure to have you on. Thanks so much, and we'll talk to you again next week.
Thank you.
Chenjerai Kumanyika is our Thursday Daily Newsflash guest expert. He is an assistant professor of communication studies at Clemson University. This is Uprising. When we come back, we'll go to San Francisco to find out about whether that city is truly a sanctuary city for undocumented immigrants, as some in the right would like us to believe. Stay tuned.